For this one, it says a new car costs $35,000 and depreciates at a rate of 26% per year. How much will the car be worth in 5 years? So for this one, I'm going to use y equals a times 1 minus r raised to the t. Okay, this is decay instead of growth, so I subtract the rate instead of adding it. So the first thing is the 35,000. That's the initial amount. 1 minus the rate, which is 0.26, raised to the t, which is 5. And this just is a plug it into my calculator type problem. I just have to be aware of the order of operations. I have to do the subtraction inside the parentheses first, and then I have to raise that to the 5th power. So just make sure you're doing this in the proper order. I'm going to punch it all in one shot here. And that gives me that y equals $7,766.52. All right. And since we're talking about money, we should obviously round to 2 decimal places. Okay. Number 36, it says to write each of these in standard form. So if I want to write this in standard form, the first thing I have to do is create space. I'm going to subtract the 6 from each side. So I'm just completing the square twice here. That's x squared plus 8x. And notice I'm organizing things as I go. The plus y squared plus 6y with a little space equals an 11. And now I fill in the blank, b divided by 2 and square it. So here I've got to add a 16. Here I have to add a 9. But remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So I have to add the 16 and the 9 to this side as well. All right. Over here, I just factor this. This is going to be an x plus 4 squared. This is going to be a y plus 3 squared. And it's going to be equal to what looks like a 36. And that's where I stop on this one. I don't bother dividing each side by the 36 because looking at these coefficients, I know that this is a circle, and this is my standard form for a circle. Okay? All right, for number 37, the first thing we want to do is identify what kind of conic section we're dealing with. In the last one, it was a circle, so that kind of changed our approach a little bit. For this one, there's 2 squared or quadratic terms. And if we look at the coefficients of those, one of them's a 5 and one of them's a 4. They're not exactly the same, so it's not a circle, but they do have the same side. So this one's an ellipse. So that kind of gives us an idea where we're going. We're still going to start off the same way. It's just going to change the end result a little bit. So we've got to add the 4 to each side to create a little bit of space. And while I do this, I'm going to reorganize. It's a 5x squared plus 30x with a little bit of space plus the 4y squared minus 16y with a little bit of space equals a -1. And now from here, before I can complete the square to the b divided by 2 and square it, I have to factor out these leading coefficients. So here I have to factor out the 5, which leaves me with an x squared plus 6x with a little space. Here I have to factor out the 4, which leaves me with a y squared minus 4y with a little bit of space. And now I can kind of fill in the blanks. Now I'm going to complete the square, so I do b divided by 2 and square it. Here, that gives me a 9. Here, b divided by 2 and square it, that's going to give me a +4. And now whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other side. In this first one, I added a 9 inside parentheses, but just imagine this 5 would get distributed. So what I really added here was a 45, okay? So I have to add the same thing to each side. I've got to add a 45 to this side. Yeah, it was a 9 in parentheses, but it's a 45 to the whole side. With the other part of this, that 4 is not just a 4, it's a 4 times 4, which is a 16. So I have to add 16 to this side. All right. And so now I'm going to factor everything completely. This is going to give me a 5x plus 3 squared plus 4y minus 2 squared equals. Over here, I just add this together. It looks like it gives me a 60. And now from here, since I know this is an ellipse, it's not a circle, I have one extra step. I have to divide each side by the 60. Okay, I have to have a 1 over here. And when I do that, I divide each piece by the 60. And this first piece, if I reduce the 5 over 60, that gives me an x plus 3 squared over 12. Over here, the 4 and the 60 reduce to a 1 and a 15. And now the last thing I have to remember with an ellipse, my larger denominator has to be written first. So I have to flip-flop these two things. And I'm just going to erase it and rewrite it here. So that's going to give me a y minus 2 squared over the 15 plus the x plus 3 squared over the 12 equals 1. And now that's written in my standard form for the ellipse. Okay? For these next couple, we're just identifying the conic section. In this first one, remember this is all about the quadratic terms, how many I have, and then what their coefficients look like. So this one I have 2 quadratic terms, so it's not a parabola. If I look at the coefficients of those quadratic terms, the 8 and the negative, the 3 and the negative 8, they're not exactly the same, so it's not a circle. They don't have the same sign, so it's not an ellipse. So that means this one is a hyperbola. So if my quadratic terms have different signs, it's a hyperbola. It's letter D. Okay. Number 39, if I look, once again, I have 2 quadratic terms, so it's not a parabola. The coefficients of those quadratic terms are a 1 and a 3. They're not exactly the same, so it's not a circle, but they do have the same sign, so this one is an ellipse. Okay? In number 40, once again, I have 2 quadratic terms, so it's not a parabola, but the coefficients of those quadratic terms are exactly the same, positive 4 and positive 4, which means this one is a circle. Okay, if they're exactly the same, it's a circle. And then the last one here, number 41, I only have 1 quadratic term, and 1 quadratic term is a giveaway for this thing being a parabola. Okay? Number 42, it asks us to find each value in graph. So I'm going to start with the vertex. Remember the vertex, we have to do the opposite of b over 2a. So that's going to be a 2 over 2 times a negative 1/8. So that's going to be 2 over a negative 1/4, which is the same as a negative 8. Since I'm looking at this thing and I see an x here, I know that this thing is horizontal. Since this is a horizontal parabola, that means when I do opposite of b over 2a, it gives me my y value instead of my x value. Okay, so my y value is negative 8. And so now what I have to do is I have to plug this in, the negative 8 in for y, to see what my x value is going to be. Okay, almost forgot my square. So when I do that, it looks like I get a 64 times a negative 1/8, which is a negative 8. And then plus 16, and then plus 1, looks like gives me a 9. All right, so my vertex is 9, negative 8. For the focus on this one, I can consult my formula sheet here. When I have a horizontal, I do h plus 1 over 4a, comma k. Okay, so in other words, my k value stays exactly the way it was. My h value is the one that changes. I do h plus 1 over 4 times a negative 1/8. That's 9 plus a negative 2, which is a positive 7. The axis of symmetry this time is y equals the y value from the vertex. The directrix is going to be x equals, and it's x equals h minus 1 over 4a. Well, it's a good thing I've done most of this already. It's 9 minus a negative 2 plus a positive. That's an 11. The length of the LR, we do the absolute value of 1 over a. So that's the absolute value of a negative 8, which is 8. And that gives me the width of the parabola through the focus. And now I just have to plot all this stuff. So I start 9, negative 8. It's down here. 7, negative 8 is right here. X equals an 11 is right here. That's a dotted line. That's my directrix. The axis of symmetry, almost forgot about him. That's a dotted line going this way. And then my LR is 8 units long, and that goes through the focus. So I have to measure 8 units right here to get my LR, which means I go 4 in each direction. See, the green line I just drew is 8 units long. That's my LR. And so I go 4 in each direction. That gives me the width of this parabola. And now I can draw this thing. I also have the x-intercept at 1, and I can reflect that point if I choose. But I've got a lot of information here in order to help graph this thing. Okay? And that's it. And when I look at this, since the a value is negative, it should open to the left, and mine does. So that kind of confirms everything that I've just done. Okay? For number 43, it says to graph the circle. Remember, the equation for the circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So the center of this one is HK, which is going to be a negative 4, 1. The radius, this is r squared, so r is just a 6. And now I come over here, I go negative 4, 1. It's right here. The radius is 6, so I go 6 in every direction that I can possibly count. 6 in this direction, 6 in this direction. I'm going down 6. I'm going over 6. And now I just do my best trying to draw something that looks like a circle. If it's not perfect, it's not perfect. In fact, this graph is probably a little bit off, so it's not going to be perfect. But just count 6 in each direction and draw the best circle that you can draw. Okay? That's it. Hope this was helpful, and good luck on your test.